Welcome to the Mendoza Province Guide. My name's Rebecca and I'll be taking you on a journey around the Mendoza region of Argentina. So let's get started. Here's a brief overview of the region. The Mendoza province is in Argentina in South America. It sits in the central western part of the country and is bordered by the semi-desert area of San Juan to the north, the San Luis province to the east, La Pampa and Neuquén to the south, and Chile to the west. But it's the Andes mountain range running alongside the west of the province that really defines this region and makes it such a special place for producing wine. What's it famous for? Mendoza is famous for the Andes mountains, for succulent steaks, and last but not least, for Malbec wine. You'll find some of the best Malbecs in the world produced here. You may also know Mendoza for its depiction in Che Guevara's memoir, The Motorcycle Diaries. Che rode through the area on his motorbike when he was a young medical student. Mendoza is a massive producer of wine. It produces around 60% of all the wine made in Argentina, which is around 1,240,000 bottles of wine, and more than 4 times what all of New Zealand produces. The Spanish colonizers and Catholic priests brought the first vines to Argentina around 400 years ago, in the early 1500s. They built monasteries and planted vineyards nearby to ensure they had plenty of wine for Holy Mass. By 1830, there were around 1,000 hectares of vineyards in Mendoza already. And winemaking in Mendoza then slowly developed until the late 1800s, when the Buenos Aires-Mendoza railway line was established. The railway line and the fast transportation it brought with it enabled much easier development of vineyards. At the same time, immigrants from southern Europe moved into the area, bringing with them viticulture and a thirst for wine. And hey presto, by 1910 there were around 45,000 hectares of vineyards in Mendoza, more than in all of Chile. Like all famous wine regions, the geography of the region is crucial to the production of the wine, and is part of what we mean when we talk about terroir. By terroir, we mean the geographical features and weather patterns that impact on the grapes. The terroir of a vineyard includes factors like the makeup of the soil, the weather, the vineyard's proximity to the sea, and also the cultural circumstances of the production, so whether a wine's made using traditional or more modern techniques. Here in Mendoza, it's the incredibly high altitudes that have the biggest impact on the grapes. They grow vines at heights of 1,000 meters here. That's as high as Mount Snowdon in Wales. And it's this altitude that keeps the temperatures cool and constant, which is excellent for the vines. The altitude also means thinner air, so more powerful sun rays. And of course the sun ripens fruit, so the grapes ripen without maturing from the heat, as is the usual case. This keeps the grapes fresh and lighter. They don't have the same intensity the grapes grown in a very hot climate have. Unlike here in the UK, it doesn't rain much in Mendoza. In fact, the average rainfall there is around 8 to 10 inches a year. That's compared to 43 inches in the UK. In Bordeaux, the average rainfall is 36 inches a year, and in Piedmont, in northern Italy, the average rainfall is around 42 to 46 inches per year. Argentina is now the 5th largest wine producer in the world, but rewind 40 years, and it was only Argentinians who drank its wine. This is because they produced low-quality wines for domestic consumption only, what we'd call table wine. So what happened? Well, in the 1970s, beer and soft drinks arrived in Argentina, and people began swapping their table wine for a beer and a can of pop. The change in habits was so dramatic that the consumption of wine dropped from 90 litres per person in 1970 to 55 litres per person by 1991. This led to the dramatic uprooting of 1 in every 3 vineyards. So what saved Argentinian wine? Well, thankfully, in 1989, a change in government helped establish a global exporting trade, and that trade is now thriving. Key white grape varieties. Chardonnay. This is the most widely planted white grape in Mendoza. The wines are not oaked here, making them fresher and more acidic than other Chardonnays. Typical flavors include citrus fruits, pear, and apple. Riesling. The Riesling vine originated in Germany, but has been grown in Mendoza long enough to produce excellent wine. Once again, the vines are grown at higher altitudes, making them fresh and particularly crisp. Typical flavors for Riesling include fruits like pineapple, lemon, and apricot. Torontes. This grape is indigenous to Argentina and is planted in very high altitudes. It produces crisp, fresh, and highly aromatic wines. Typical flavors you may find are peach, lychee, and grape. Malbec. The first Malbec vines were planted here in the second half of the 16th century, and it's now the most important grape in Mendoza. Typical flavors you'll find in Malbecs include plum, spices, and berries. Tempranillo. Brought to Argentina by the Spanish, this black grape makes powerful, full-bodied wines. Typical flavors include tobacco leaves, leather, and vanilla. It is the second most planted grape in Mendoza. Cabernet Sauvignon. This is another very important grape in the region. Full-bodied and rich, it goes excellently with red meat, so it's no surprise that it's widely grown here. Typical flavors include red fruits like cherry, black pepper, and licorice. There are a number of key wine-growing regions in Mendoza. We're going to look at 4. The Lujan de Cuyo and Maipú regions are located in the center of Mendoza, and it's here that some of the finest Malbec wines are produced. The altitude ranges from around 650 meters above sea level to roughly 1,070 meters above sea level. At 1,700 meters high, the Ucu Valley, or Valley de Ucu, features the highest vineyards in all of Mendoza. At 1,700 meters, that's nearly half the height of Mount Fiji. Located in the south of Mendoza are the departments of San Rafael and General Alvear. This is where most of Mendoza's Chenin is produced, as well as Chardonnay, Malbec, and Sauvignon Blanc. So, to summarize, this region is famous for high altitudes. Some of the highest growing vines in the world are grown in Mendoza. Malbec. You'll find some of the most delicious and intense Malbecs in Mendoza. Fantastic pairings of steaks with red wines like Malbec, Tempranillo, and Cabernet Sauvignon.